guys, welcome back to another tech tip video. We're going to be talking about our Untapped episode number 7, Minnesota. There's a lot of frogging and a lot of flipping, my two favorite ways to go fishing. If you haven't seen it and you're watching this on YouTube, click on the link right here. It's going to take you to that video. And if you're on Facebook, go back to my video archive, look up Untapped episode number 7, watch that, see the fish catches, see what we did, a lot of fun going on, and come back here to get all the info on the techniques, the baits, products that I use to put those fish in the boat. If you've already seen it, let's go ahead and get started. First off, let's talk about flipping the reeds. This lake had multiple areas that had reeds in it, and there was about 2 to 3 foot of water on them, so there's more than enough water to hold a lot of fish. So that was one of the first areas that I ran to.
If I had a choice every day of how I wanted to fish, this would be it.
Now the first thing I like to do when I pull up the reeds like this is I try not to look at the whole thing as one big vast area. I try to isolate and break it down into small little portions, you know, does it have a lot of points in it? Is it spread apart? Are the reeds tightly packed? You know, all this stuff can vary from one stretch to the next, and it makes it easier for me because once that I get a bite, say it's on the outside or is it in the inside, was it on a point? So then I can start to duplicate that, because the last thing you want to do is go down a stretch like this, blind, kind of aimlessly going about it. Until you get your first bite, you kind of are, but just keep those things in mind that you're breaking this down into certain portions, And the key for me was that there was an algae bloom, so the water was pretty dirty. So what I would do is I was pitching that Berkley Pit Boss up there to the clumps on the points and letting that thing sit there for way longer than what I normally would. And it took me probably a good 20, 30 yards before I got my first bite doing that, but I let it sit there for almost 8 to 10 seconds, and one picked it up and started swimming with it. So once I got that bite, it clued me in that I needed to take my time, and really pick that stuff apart.
Things are mean. Oh, so fun.
Every day, sit here and flip this Pit Boss around. It's the best bite in the world. That was a fake kiss. She's not big enough yet. Most of my bites came from the outside on every little point that came out of those reeds. It was like clockwork almost. But the key was also not to disturb the reeds when you're pitching your bait up there. You want to make a quiet presentation, because if you crash your bait into those reeds, that fish is sitting down there using that point as an ambush point for when, bait comes flushing by. So the last thing you want to do is crash those reeds, and that fish is going to be gone. So making an easy, subtle presentation was a big deal, and just letting that bait fall down and sit there. And once that fish found it, it was lights out. So I started to venture into the backs of it, started pitching around, actually putting my boat, going back into the reeds and dissecting the areas behind it. And I actually got a couple bites doing it. Those fish will go, if there's enough water above their head, they're gonna go back as far as they can. So just don't think that, you see some reeds that they're just on the front line of them. Don't be scared to, put your boat back in there. That trolling motor, it'll cut through some stuff. So put your boat back right in the center of them after you'd already, kind of picked that stuff apart, and go back there and see if there's some fish back there. I mean, I always like to think the bigger fish like to live deeper or even thicker. So they're going to, be back in that thick stuff. And we caught a couple fish doing that as well.
That's what you call going in and getting them, boys. Getting them. Meat fatty. Boom.
let's go over my flipping setup. For my rod, I like to use an Abu Garcia 7.6 medium heavy Veracity. This is a stiffer rod, and for me personally, it works really well because I don't think I have a very strong hook set compared to most. I don't like to drop the tip to set the hook. I like to feel the fish. Once I feel the fish is on, I pull straight back. You know, I'll get a strong hook set, but I don't like to dip. I've had too many instances where, you know, you lose a lot of fish because of the time that it takes to drop the tip. So for me, it makes up for not having, you know, dropping the tip to set the hook. That 7.6 medium heavy Veracity kind of makes up for that. And for my reel, I like to use the Abu Garcia Revo MGX 7:9 gear ratio. This thing's ultra smooth, ultra light. It's one of my all-time favorite reels. It's gonna allow you to make those really tight pitches into those small areas without disturbing those fish. And for my line, I use 50-pound Spiderwire Ultracast braid, and I paired that up with a 20-pound Berkley Trilene 100% fluorocarbon leader. Now this gave me the best of both worlds. I was invisible to the fish from the fluorocarbon, and I had all the strength and sensitivity of braid. It really came in clutch when pitching these reeds. For my weight, I used a 3/8 ounce tungsten weight that was pegged. For my hook, I used a Berkley Fusion 19 4/0 straight shank hook. I've come to love this hook this year. It's a new design by Berkley. They came out with a whole line of hooks. I really fell in love with their 3/0 and 4/0 straight shank hooks. And for my bait, I used the Berkley Havoc 4-inch Pit Boss in black and blue. The black and blue was a key just because the water was so dirty. The algae was real bad. Felt like, you know, it left more of a silhouette in the water that they could see. Again, the Berkley Havoc Pit Boss, one of my favorite go-to baits. You know, I probably could have got away with a chigger crawl or something else, but you know, that was the first bait that I stuck on there and those fish just gobbled it up. Now let's talk about the frogging. This is probably my favorite part of the episode. We pull back in, there's a little bay and there's a lot of milfoil, and on top of that was what I like to call cheese, or the mat. You know, it wasn't real thick, but it was thick enough, obviously, to throw that frog out there and let it do its thing across the top of it. And there's nothing more exciting than seeing a bass come up through all that grass to strike that frog. When I pull into an area like that, I like to look at the entire mat and kind of try to dissect it the same as I would the reed line, and just write off the obvious things about it. Is there a lot of holes? Is there a lot of thick part? The points? Could there be any depressions? The lake that we were at actually had a creek that was coming out the back of it that you can see. So obviously there had to be some type of depression along there. You know, it was probably very small, but I mean 6 inches to those bass is a lot. So just something to keep in mind. And you know, what I would do is I would throw out there making super long casts, which is very important when you're frogging like that, is to make as long as a cast as possible and be patient. You know, this isn't a race to get it back. I know it can take up to a minute or longer just to get, you know, one cast in. It's almost like throwing a jerk bait. You got to think of how many bass that you're running that frog by. Once I throw it out there, I'm gonna make subtle twitches, you know, trying to make as much commotion but move the frog as little as possible, if that makes any sense. You don't want to move the frog as much because you got to think that bass is trying to look up and figure out where that thing is at. And if it can't see it, it's guessing. So if you're moving at 6-10 inches at a time, more than likely that bass is going to come up and miss that frog. So I'm making short twitches all the way back to the boat. You know, I'm crossing over holes and I'm working the frog when it comes to a hole. I'm bringing the frog across points. I'm making casts to the thicker parts of the mat. That way I'm going to get a read on where those fish are. I've had days where they only would come up through the holes. I've had days where they only come up through the thickest parts, or they sit on the edges. So you really want to break that down, and after that you just want to try to cover as much of it as you possibly can.
Biggin. Biggin.
Oh. Frog is gone. Gandhi. Now, all that being said about looking at the mat, dissecting it, trying to figure out where the points are, don't ever take your eyes off your frog when it's out there, okay? Maybe in between casts, look around, but I'm telling you, it will burn you sooner or later if you take your eyes off that frog. One's gonna come up there and slurp it down, and you're not gonna know it, and you're gonna twitch, and you're gonna feel him on there, and you're gonna go shoot. And by then it's too late. I've done it in tournaments, I've done it practice. You know, don't take your eyes off the frog. Just picture yourself as being a ninja, have a ninja focus on that frog, because, you know, I've brought it over places where the fish never came up through the mat, but just moved the mat. And what I did is I reeled up and I made another cast out there, and sure enough, one came up and smoked it. Now, if I wasn't paying attention, I would have never seen that movement, never, you know, would have witnessed any of it, and I would have made a cast somewhere else, missing out on a 3+ pound bite. So never take your eyes off the frog. And for my frog setup, I love the Abu Garcia 7.3 Heavy Vendetta. I know a lot of you guys are like, why aren't you using some of the higher end stuff that Abu has? This is a rod that I have the utmost confidence in. I started throwing a frog on this rod back when I started fishing. Pulled out numerous fish out of the thickest stuff. And I know some of you guys are sitting there going, but wait, he was throwing a Veritas 2.0 in the video, and you're right. The reason why is I didn't have my frog rod in the boat that day. Actually, rigged up my rods the night before, left it in the truck. So what does any fisherman do? They adjust. I took out my buzz toed rod, cut the buzz toed off of it, and I slapped on a hollow body frog and continued to work with the Veritas 2.0. That also was a 7.3 medium heavy, and it worked great. I never threw a frog on it before, a hollow body, but like I said, my original favorite rod was still in the truck, but you guys see me use it in other videos. It's a meat stick of a rod. It's stiff, it's stout. You know, it's just one of those rods that I have a ton of confidence in, and it's sold at a great affordable price. And for my reel, again, I use the Abu Garcia Revo MGX 7:9 to 1 gear ratio. I can bomb this frog out there a long ways. This thing will get it out there, and I can retrieve it back in quickly with that 7:9 to 1 gear ratio. All around a great reel. And obviously for my braid, I'm using 50-pound Spiderwire Ultracast braid. This stuff doesn't break. It's, you know, thin in diameter, so you can cast it super far, and it's already out of the package limp, which is a big deal to me because, you know, I don't want something that's real grainy and hard to cast. I want something that's slick and smooth, and this stuff will get the frog out there and it'll get the fish back in the boat. And for my hollow body frog, I use all sorts of brands. The main thing I'm looking for is a good stout set of hooks that's not gonna bend, and anymore the bodies are made so well you can go anywhere and get you a hollow body frog right off the shelf, and it's going to work for you. I hope you guys gained some more insight to tackling those mats with the frog or taking your pitch bait to the reed line. Just remember, don't let it be so big. Break it down into the small irregularities that those bass are using to ambush their prey, and you're going to find more fish that way. I'll see you guys on the next Tech Tips.